Hello, everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And today I am super duper thrilled to have Tarek Kamil on. He is someone who's come to me by a referral of somebody who's listening to the show. I've been listening to this show for a long, long time. So I'm very grateful for that. I love when you all are listening and you think, I know of the perfect person to come on the show. So welcome, Tarek.
Well, thanks for having me, Heather. It's great to finally talk to you.
So where are you? Tell everybody right now where you are in your leadership journey. What's going on?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. I've seen a little bit of everything, honestly. I do feel like I've gone from the corporate world. It's kind of my first job out of college, corporate, and then left to start a company. And I was young. That was 5 companies ago that I started. So 5 different ventures, and every one is an opportunity to learn, right? Every time you start a company, it's like having a child, and they all have different needs, and your people are different, and you are learning a crazy amount as a leader. So I would say I feel good about where I am kind of in my leadership journey. I'm never done learning. I think there's always opportunities to get better. And probably the biggest lessons I've learned recently is this idea of no ego. And so what I mean by that is one of our foundational principles within Cerkl, our company, is the best idea wins, right? If you really want to do something innovative, then we have to challenge everything. And that means the best idea might come from an intern. If it's better than my idea, guess which one we're picking? The intern's idea. Otherwise, ego gets in the way of so much growth opportunity. And that's true of professionally, personally, it's everywhere. I just feel like ego is our enemy. But as a leader, it's hard to get past that. And so it's a conscious effort that you have to make to get your ego out of the way and really put the best interest of the organization first. It doesn't matter how you look. It matters, will we win? Really, it comes down to that. It's a really hard lesson, I think, for people to learn because we've brought up with ego being so important. How you look, how people perceive you, don't ask questions, all these things that I think are silly and stand in the way of success and innovation. But that's what a lot of society, family, friends, school teach us. But I feel like the real definition of success is almost do the opposite of everything you've ever learned.
Oh, I love that so much. So tell everybody, what are you up to from a career perspective? Yeah, I know that you lead an organization. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm CEO and founder of a company called Cerkl. Don't judge me on the spelling. Sounds like circle the shape, but it's spelled Cerkl. And it ties back to what we do, which is kind of this machine learning AI feedback loop, hence the idea of a circle. And I've been in that role for, I guess, going on 10 years now with this organization. Started this company as an idea and have been in the same role, kind of building it and watching it grow over the past 10 years.
What was the spark like that made you think about founding this company and this concept?
I love this question so much. I'm an engineer, so technically it's just how my brain works. I see the world through technology, and I see opportunities to make the world a better place using technology. And my brain loves problems. It's just wired that way.
Mm.
I get bored if I'm not, working on some meaty problem. And where this problem came from was I was serving on my kids' school board here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and they were young, middle school, elementary school. And so I get involved. I love education in general, but especially public education, because I view it as a great equalizer. And so I wanted to be involved. I love volunteering. And so I get involved with our school board, and I realize that a lot of the constituents, the parents, the alumni, the community, don't know what we're doing, which to me is saddening. How do you not know all the great things and opportunities for Heather to engage, right, with our school district? And who knows, the one kid that sees you and says, I didn't even know that was possible, right? All of these serendipitous opportunities are missed because people are drowning. That's really the root cause. We as a society are all drowning. And it's so much communication and content. And I've got to be on all the social media channels to make sure I don't miss anything. And so I thought, how could we start to tailor the communication to the recipient? How could we deliver a Netflix type experience to you as a parent in our community so you're getting really targeted, relevant communication? So when we do send you something, it is a good use of your time. I hear a line a lot, and I'm sure you've heard it too, which is, we live in the information age. Everybody's heard this line. Mm-hmm. I disagree. I think we live in the attention age. And that is the key. Can you really grab someone's attention, and how do you effectively do that? So that was the fundamental problem I set out to solve. And P.S., this was never intended to be a business. I just wanted more people involved with our kids' education.
Wow, that is crazy. And so now what are the kind of the not industries, your focal points now for customers? Are you working in corporate? Are you working mostly in education? Tell me more about that.
It's a sad story, but I built this platform nights and weekends because I'm a nerd and that's what I like to do. And I thought, this is really going to change how schools engage with their constituents. And I gave it away. I tried and tried, and I went to 60, 70 different school districts, and I said, this is free. I'm not a business. I just think this is the right thing to do to drive better educational outcomes for our kids. And of those 60 or 70 school districts, 0 said yes. And it's free, right? So people, I think they look at entrepreneurship as this really sexy, romanticized thing. There's so many people opposed to change. It's one of the laws of physics. I can't remember which one, but a body at rest tends to stay at rest. That is our world. Unless you really give them a reason to move, they will not. Yes. And so that was disheartening, but you don't give up. I just have it in my head. This is how the world should be. And so I keep going. And what happens is lots of people start using this technology. And there was a large healthcare organization, 10,000 employees, that came to me and said, could we use this technology to tailor what we send to each of our employees based on who they are, what they need to know, what they want to know, on their schedule, in their channel, even in their language? I was like, yes, of course. And it was shocking to me that really that type of internal communication didn't exist. And when I talked to them, I realized that nothing has really evolved internally in terms of how we talk to our people. It feels like it's the 90s, right? It's still a lot of email. It's still intranets that aren't really easy to use or easy to look at. And so primary channels haven't really changed. And I think about what drove engagement for brands like Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Spotify. There's one common thing they all do. They only talk to Heather. It's all about you. Everywhere you go on Amazon, Hulu, Spotify, whatever, every email, every interaction across every device is about you. Why? Because they want to save you time. Why? Because they know the secret is we're all drowning. And so if they can cut through the noise on your behalf, you're much more likely to use them. And so that fundamentally is the foundation of Cerkl and what we've built. It is around the same model of engaging your people through hyper personalization. Everything is about Heather across channels. So that's kind of a super long answer to a very short question, but that's where this all came from. And that led us from kind of education to employee communication.
It makes me think of, well, there's a couple things. First is like meeting people right where they're at. That's a big one that we talk about, that I talk about a lot. You know, whole person leadership, meeting people where they're at in the moment to solve for their need. That drowning thing is a real issue for sure. I think that you know, having that there, I think feeling like someone specifically talking to you also makes you feel important, which is another thing I talk a lot about. What are the ways we can do that? I'm wondering, what role do you think kind of AI is going to play? Because I think AI is a portion of this, right? So I'd love to hear more about that and in the platform you've created, and what role you think AI is going to play overarchingly in the future of internal communications as it relates to employees and engagement and all of that.
Yeah, I think there's a fantastic question, super timely. I think there are a number of things to be excited about and a number of things to worry about. And so, we started with AI and machine learning 9, 10 years ago. And the idea is very much follow the Netflix model, where you might change your behavior. You go from romantic comedies to watching documentaries. Netflix gets smart and makes better recommendations. It's all about saving you time. And so the same concept applies with internal communication. So there's really two buckets of things you could ever say to someone within your organization. It's something they need to know. So when you think about HR, that might be compliance, it might be open enrollment, it might be we have a new leader we want to introduce you to, message from the CEO. These are not optional, right? This is not a marketing exercise. You must know these things. Then there's a whole bucket of nice to know things. You don't need to know them to do your job. But hey, we're doing this thing with Habitat, or we're sponsoring the New York Marathon, or whatever. You don't need to know those to do your job. But we're doing all kinds of cool things which may or may not resonate with you. So when we talk about the role of an organization and the role of HR and with communication within that, you think about, would you define success as my employees are informed and engaged? I think everyone would say yes to that question. If I had informed, engaged employees, I'm killing the game, right? And so how do we make sure they're informed? That's the need to know information. And the key to that is it has to be in front of them, and it can't be redundant. So if you've read the open enrollment message on the intranet, why are we sending you an email about the exact same thing you've already read somewhere else? We're training them that irrelevancy is okay with us. And so they start to tune things out. And then really important messages get missed. So that's the need to know. The want to know, the engagement part of that equation is, what does Heather as a human being actually care about? Not as an employee. What do you as a human care about? How do we get that to you at scale? Which is what Netflix is doing and Amazon is doing. And so we're basically taking the same model that exists and engages you as a consumer, and we're applying that same methodology to you as an employee. Need to know, want to know, informed, engaged. That's AI in terms of how we utilize it. Everyone's talking about ChatGPT and Bard and all of these generative AI models, which I think are amazing. They are fascinating. It's shockingly good, I would say. I didn't expect this fast. I did a talk at MIT. Wow, this is probably 7 years ago. And I made the prediction we would see things like this around 2030. This is way ahead of when I expected us to see this. And it is crazy good. Where we need to be concerned is multitude of areas. So lots of positives. I think using it for ideation super helpful. Give me ideas around this topic. Um, Write a memo for me about this topic. Great. You take it as a great starting point, might save you 70% of your time. Love that. Where we need to be careful is around what are you actually telling this thing? And who will learn from what you just put in, right? There's already terrible examples of people putting in software code that they are working on that is proprietary that now ChatGPT is recommending to other people. So obviously, you have to be super careful. Obviously, organizations should be releasing a generative AI usage policy. You cannot put in confidential things into ChatGPT or anything like it because it learns based on what you just gave it. And so they're coming out with things like enterprise level of ChatGPT, which is firewalled. So your organization, it won't learn from what you give it. Super smart. So that's starting to come out. The other area of caution is just the fact checking, because the way these models work is they learn based on what's out there. Well, now that we have given everyone access to go to ChatGPT or anything like it and say, write a blog post about the top 5 things you need as a HR leader, right? And it's going to do a pretty good job of coming up with that. If there is something that is factually incorrect and you don't catch it and you publish this, it's going to learn based on itself. That factual incorrect thing will become a fact because it's learning and it's incestuous. So this is where I worry about misinformation and things which aren't true becoming true, because the speed at which we can create content has now exponentially increased. So overall, like anything else, I think it's going to be really positive and helpful with caveats. Just be careful.
I am curious to know because I saw like you were successful in getting your first round. I think at least it was a first round. I didn't look in detail to see what else there was, but there's a couple things that have me curious about just like your journey. First is, what do you see as the differences on like try to engage now that you lead like engineers and all of that here, and the difference between engagement in the kind of the corporate, big, maybe bigger corporate space versus the startup space? How do you, what do you see kind of the biggest challenges there? And also, this is another thing that's got me curious. It always will. So I'm going to just go there, Tarek. I think it's this concept of someone with your name. How accessible and how complicated was even getting the funding? Did people see that? You know, because like, for example, with me, they'll see my name, they're like, huh. But when they see my picture, there's like assumption. So we're going into bias here. So there's like
Yes.
all kinds of, my brain is just racing. So like the idea of like bias in the AI space, bias and kind of what you're talking about with the platform and how it interprets things. When you're going as a startup, you know, how is engagement different? Do you feel it's harder? Do you feel like you have time? Just you personally as a leader? And then I know I'm asking you all these questions. I'm going to come back. Don't worry. And then the other thing is just like your name, which I love your name, by the way. But people
Thank
like
you.
just thinking about our political climate all over the world now, seeing your name, how have you felt any differences? Has it been kind of a challenging journey with you just with the startup, starting this whole concept up? I'm curious.
Wow, that was a lot.
I know. So let's just start with the first. The first one is startup and like the engagement difference between like big corporate and kind of you now running maybe this team. I don't know how many folks you have in your organization now.
Yeah, I always like to take complex issues and then boil them down to really simple analogies. And so let's say we'll take extreme examples. You and I are going to start a company. It's just the two of us. Okay. Keeping you informed and engaged is probably we have coffee every morning. I know what you like. I know what you're into. I can ask the appropriate questions. I can know, oh, you're really into this hobby. Let me introduce you to this person. Super easy to keep you both informed and engaged. That's one person, a company of 2 people. As soon as we add one more person to this equation, this becomes difficult. So we've just gone from 2 to 3. And now think in your head this Venn diagram. And what is the intersection between these two people I'm talking to? How do I keep them both informed and engaged? It has gotten unbelievably more complicated with just a 3-person company. Now, expand that out. So you've got 10,000 employees, 100,000 employees. This is not scalable in any way. And that's where technology becomes your friend.
Mm.
So I take it, and I would say Blockbuster. I don't know how old people are listening to this show, but I remember
They run the
going to
gamut.
Blockbuster. Well, if you remember Blockbuster, and I think there is still one left in Oregon. Did you
Yes.
know this?
Yes, I did know that. I just found this out a couple weeks ago.
I would totally go.
I
I
would too.
just,
Totally
yeah.
nostalgia.
So Blockbuster is kind of the old school way of it's not scalable. You may or may not know the person at the desk. They may or may not remember what you've seen, what you like, whatever. It's just not scalable. There's thousands of customers walking into Blockbuster every day. Netflix is the opposite, where they're using technology to scale engagement because it's tracking what you do and how fast you binge watch things and what you finish and what you don't and all of it, right? What you give thumbs up and thumbs down to. It's all learning so they can scale. And again, it goes back to why. Well, of course, they want to make money and they want to keep you as a customer. But honestly, the key to doing this is to save you time. We're just busy. It all keeps coming back to the same topic of people are drowning. So all of it is related. And so when I think about, what people in a big corporate environment, which lots of our customers are, you have to use technology to solve this problem, really to do it at scale and do it well. Now, the next question might be, does our leadership understand the value of engaging our people? Do they understand the correlation between informed and engaged and retention? That is the holy grail in HR. Because if you can show not only are people more productive, but we're keeping our best talent longer, the cost of losing these people is so high. In HR, I think, this is all learning for me, has long been looking for a way to show the true value they are driving to the bottom line. And to me, it is tied all to talent. It is, for most companies, their biggest expense, and it's also their biggest asset. And so if you can show, just like marketing can show and operations can show and sales can show, this is how we're affecting the bottom line. If HR can do the same thing around we've retained talent longer, do you know that saved us? Make up a number, $20 million based on how many people and how much it costs to replace them. That gets people's attention because it's all money. It is all money. And so that's where I see things headed from it's really complicated just with a 3-person company. So anything more than that just continues to increase in complexity. And that's where technology can really make you look like a rock star.
What have been your own personal challenges with just transitioning over, now having Cerkl of leading this team and expecting to kind of there's tech is there and they're all expected. There's like a unique thing. I have my son who's in engineering school right now, and he just has a unique way of engaging and a unique way of communicating, because it's very little of it, but you have to read between the lines and such all the subtleties that exist with engineers who because we're not it's not going to necessarily be high verbal. I'm sure there's obviously differences, or there's some people who do stand out as high verbal, but mostly it's internal and you got to pay attention. I talk about it at Recognizing the Unsaid. So it's like spotting the nonverbal cues, the little cultural tweaks and changes that are happening in your own team. So what have you found to be maybe some of the challenges in that with trying to scale and grow and at the same time meet the needs of the engineers that you're leading?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think you probably can even expand that. So you've got different types of workers and organizations, probably now more than ever because of COVID. We've seen kind of the splintering of the workforce. It used to be desked and deskless. That's kind of the two buckets. Your frontline or you're sitting behind a desk. Now it's those plus. You've got hybrid work, remote work, you've got all these different channels for which they need to be checking to receive communication. I think it's become infinitely more complicated. But it really goes back to a statement you made at the very beginning of our conversation, which is meet them where they are. And how do you really do that at scale? And so that's kind of our concept. And technology is not a silver bullet. So I don't want anyone listening to this to think, oh, I install some software, I'm ready to go. Boom, engagement. That's not true. That will never happen. But can it help you close the gap? So, of course, there's technology that's part of it. There is manager training that's part of it. There is, what does your onboarding process look like? Do they have a mentor? How do they like to be communicated with and engaged? Because it varies. Even engineers, as you said, I'm an engineer, but I'm okay to make eye contact with you. And most aren't, right? It's a very different thing.
So
So,
true. So true.
the bottom line is they're all individuals. And the reason it makes sense for us mentally to bucket them together is because we can't scale. We can't scale personalization because it's so difficult one to one. Even if you had a team of 100 communicators and 500 HR people, you cannot scale it. It's just too difficult. So again, I think it's a mix. Honestly, the right answer is it's a mix of lots of things. And it goes back to how do you want to, well, two things. How do you want to be treated? And more importantly, how does that person want to be treated? And if we start thinking this way with empathy, then it makes sense, right? These are the things that we should go fight for because it's how I myself want to be treated, and how I think our others in our organization want to be treated. And I always think when these conversations come up with leadership and they push back for whatever reason, I think, what if your son or daughter worked here? That's the question I always ask them. How do you want them to experience our organization and our culture? Your own child. When they think like this, and it's put in very personal terms, it's weird, right? They get out of the spreadsheets and they get back into humanity. But you
Yes.
have to almost jolt them into these are humans, these are not numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Yes.
have to give them something they can associate, which I always use. What if your daughter or son worked in our organization? What would you want them to say about this place?
Usually, one big part about our the show is I love to talk about the leader in in a complicated situation. Maybe it's a story. I'd like for you to share a specific story with the listeners about a time when you maybe didn't show up with care or leading with heart or with the sense of humanity and humanness and meeting people where they're at. And I just share a specific story. And then what did you do to become more enlightened? Was there a trigger? Was there something that was a catalyst that made you go, huh, yeah, the person is more important than the spreadsheet. The person's more important than the process, the technology, whatever it is. I'd love to hear that story. If you could share a specific story about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think we're all imperfect, and I certainly am imperfect. And I think one of my biggest faults is the way my brain works. We talked about it earlier. I love to solve problems. I come across, I think, as not paying attention or cold because I'm thinking so deeply. And when people come to me with issues that are really important to them, I feel like I need to slow down. Like my brain has to, I guess, what's the right analogy? I'd say really deep, 10,000 feet deep, thinking about this problem. And then someone comes in, and as a leader, you need to be there and be responsive. But it takes me a while to get back to the surface. I'm so deep in my own head about whatever I'm thinking about. It is difficult. And I didn't realize how that was affecting people. And I had someone relatively new on the marketing team, and we were working on a project together, and my brain is just kind of moving on to the next step, on to the next step. And to her credit, she pulled me aside and said, "Hey, this isn't helpful. I'm not learning anything. I only see the output, right? The cake. I don't see how you baked it. Can you slow down and walk me through your thought process?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I am so glad you told me this, because I would never have recognized this about myself. I'm thinking just move on to the next thing, go as fast as you can." And I really was doing her a disservice by not including her as part of, this is what I'm thinking, and this is why I'm thinking this. And what would you do? Right? We weren't having that interaction. It is, I can see the answer, I go to the answer, and I just kind of tell her, here it is. The answer is 26. She has no idea how I arrived at that. It's a huge issue. And I still struggle with it because my default is kind of move on to the next thing.
I love that so much. And it speaks to me because I have that same kind of mind where I'm going like at rapid pace. And
Yes.
I don't know if you know this, but I have a few books, but my last one's called The Art of Active Listening. And so it actually walks you through a 5-step process for how to listen more effectively. And I just put a video out today that was related to this exact concept, which is someone comes to you and you're knee deep in a project, you're knee deep in thought. And instead of trying to like talk to them and be present when you know good and well you're not going to be, because pretty much none of us can be, we're like you said, we're 10,000 feet deep. The alternative thing to say is, um, let me, Tarek, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I know that you need me right now. I am so far down in this other rabbit hole, this thought process, that I'm not going to be able to give you the time and attention I know you deserve. Can I take some time to kind of get out of this place, come back to you in an hour, come back to you in 30 minutes, come back to you tomorrow, and then I can give you that time and attention? Is that okay? And then they say, oh, sure, because they know that you're giving one thing at a time, the time and attention, and now they do feel important. And so I
Yes.
would venture to say what we just talked about is there's two things. I think this interaction that you talked about and how we can show up differently going forward, we can do it that way with what I just said, human to human, one person at a time. And I would venture to say that your tool, that Cerkl, actually provides that same level of importance, particularly because it does hone in and personalize. So it creates a sense of connection between them and the organization, them and their manager. It also it imparts this sense of importance to them, that I'm important enough, because they don't know. I mean, they really don't know what this tool is doing. They don't know if their manager or the senior leadership team is personalizing it. They don't quite know how all the intricacies are. So it actually makes the senior leadership team and the organization look really good, because as if they're
Yes.
really paying attention to their team members, when
I
in
love
fact,
it.
it's the platform that's delivering that. So I love that what we just talked about is this one-on-one, human to human, and how do you have that conversation? And then there's this ability to scale that same feeling of they actually respect me. They value my opinion and my voice, and they're going to handle it more gently than most would do, right? Because ordinarily people would say, "I'm gonna, yeah, come on in the office," and then they're gonna be like, "Come in the office," and they're gonna be looking, "Oh yeah, oh yeah," and they're gonna be on Slack, "Oh yeah, it's really, oh yeah," and they know that you're not giving them the time and attention. They know it.
Right.
But if you do that, if you say what you just said, I am knee deep, and that is just being 100% transparent. I'm going to appreciate that. I don't know about you. I am fully going to appreciate a leader who says that to me and says,
I
"Can I
love
come
it.
back to you?" Right?
Yeah. And that's, you know what? It's great language. I think you equip people with, to say, A, first of all, it's okay. And B, they feel heard, right? If I would have used that language, and to be self-aware enough to use that language with someone that needs my time and attention, I think they feel important enough that, like, hey, I'm not going to, you know, brush you off, just kind of shake my head yes to anything that you're saying right now. It is, you're really meaningful to me, you're important to me. Let's be present.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that right now, and that's okay. That's okay. I think that is such good language you have just equipped me with, and I will absolutely be using that going forward. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. This is so amazing. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay, let's go because I'm not going to forget about this question. It's it's not the last question. There's a couple more after this, but we're going a little longer. But don't worry, we'll be done. Well, let me know actually. I'm going to take this offline. Or where are you with your time? Because we had 9 and 9:45. Can we end?
I'm good. Yeah,
Okay, all
I'm
right.
up to you.
Okay, good, perfect. Okay, so now I want to come back to that question. That question related to as we were looking at you scaling that startup and growing it and going out for funding and all of that, were there did you see any biases or any things that came up related to just your name? I'm curious.
I
Before they
think
met
it's
you.
one of those things. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know, right? The only way to actually answer that question would be I'd have to go back in time, do the exact same things that I did, but have a different name. That's the only way I could possibly know. And so I choose to assume the best in people. And here's the funny thing. It doesn't really matter as long as they see dollar signs for most people, right? Most investors, they want to make money by definition. It's a very, otherwise they're giving to charity. And so when it comes to making money,
Good point.
it's it's the idea, it is the people, it's the team, it's the execution. So I can't even answer that question of was I ever met with bias? I'm sure I was, but I don't know it. I don't know what the multiverse version of this would have been if you kept everything the same and you changed one variable, which is my name. Don't know.
Mm. I love that I love that thinking. I know it's absolutely engineering. This is like like I said, I'm feeling my son come out of this because this is exactly he's a very factual. And I am for me, it's just kind of that same thing where number one, I don't have my name is not like a stereotypical, let's say, name. But when they see me, sometimes there are little like, little things that you happen. But I'm with you. I fully am with you on I choose to see the positive. I wipe it out of my head if something happens. I'm like, it's there. I saw it. I can't unsee it, but in the end, I'm going to keep marching forward because it's the voice, like the voice that you have that's unique out in the world and how you're impacting workplaces and engagement and just people's perception of internal communications. And when you keep focusing forward on that, it's like all the other things are minuscule. They're minor. I don't want to waste
Yes.
my time even if I did see something, I just erased it from my mind because it wasn't worth value. The value is for me, like for example, my unique thing is always about connection, unity, not divisiveness, but how do we bring people together? And so the one of the reasons why I was so attracted to your company is it's because it is Cerkl. And I believe I'm always telling people bring more people around the table when it comes to your decision making, expand the circle, making sure that people who come from different backgrounds, who are different departments, reach across the table. Do not limit yourself and silo yourself. And so the circle concept, I loved it. I love just that opening it up, sharing more, not sharing less, not because this is what happens often in organizations, right? Is that it is like siloed communication. This group gets to know this piece of information. This group gets to know this piece of information. But like, what happens if we inform more people about this thing? What kind of innovation could we get? What, like you said, what kind of engagement will we get? How much how much buy-in will we get if more people knew this thing? So I love this concept so much. It completely ties into all the things I'm talking about as it relates to inclusion, because this is what inclusion is to me. Inclusion is making sure more people are in kind of around the table, in the circle, and having a part to play in the culture that they all want.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. We have a lot of customers that are healthcare, retail, manufacturing. And it goes back to this different classification of worker, right? They're making things, they're on hospital floor, they're in front of a cash register. And how are they made to feel versus, your leadership team, your IT folks, your finance, accounting, people behind a desk,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when we talk about inclusion, I think it's such an opportunity across the entire organization. Yes, there's race, religion, sexual orientation. Then there's really easy things for us to make people feel included, like why are we not giving them the same technology that the desk worker has? There's no excuse for it anymore. And so I'm with you. I think there's real opportunity in this area around inclusion, and I would love to see more data around what's the financial. It's
Mm.
first of all, I hate even saying it because it's the right thing to do. We're humans.
Oh yeah.
But at the end of the day, right, if you could show it's financial motivator to do the right thing anyway, everybody wins. But they always want numbers. Always.
They sure do, don't they?
It
You're saying
should
that.
be enough. It should be enough. It's just the right thing to do.
I mean, I think we all kind of want numbers if we think about progress. I mean, I don't want to. I would normally lean towards not really demonizing or something like saying, well, this person, they need this. But in the end, kind of we all want that. I mean, you as you're scaling your business, you want to see
Mhm.
the signs of success too. And I think when we go in my consulting firm, Employee Fanatics, when we go into an organization, it really is about saying, what does success look like? And we do need to look at where your starting points are. We can't even tell you what we've done to improve anything if we don't know where you're starting. So I think the quantitative and qualitative is very insightful. But I do think, again, the tool that you provide, the work and how it intersects even what we do, just creating that sense of buy-in, connection, and inclusion goes a long way for success and change initiatives, for just keeping keeping people with you longer. I am talking to organizations who they say the average employee's been here 17, 18 years. And it's like, I can guarantee you, they may not have the technology tool, but they're getting it right as it relates to including more people, getting that
Yes.
engagement there, and trying to change the world. I think that's what we want to do anyway, change the world and create more connection. So this has been great. I very much thankful for you coming on here. There's so many other ways I can go with this. Like we'd probably be on there for a couple more hours because there's just so much curiosity I have there. And I may have you back on again, but Tarek, I really do appreciate you being on here, and it's been amazing.
No, you do a wonderful job. I enjoy the conversation, and if it sparks people to think differently, then I think it's a success. So thank you.
And thanks everybody for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.